I'm sitting down with Michael Binnion. Now, you wear a number of different hats. Normally, I speak to you in your capacity as Executive Director of the Modern Miracle Network, but we do things a little bit differently today, I thought. You're also the CEO of Questerre, which is one of Canada's many successful companies in the energy sector. Whatever hat you're wearing, it's always good to talk to you.
Well, thank you. And I think you've even seen me in a cowboy hat.
Yes, yeah, all sorts of get-ups, I believe. Well, let's talk. We've been discussing the just transition with you and some of your colleagues while we've been here. But let me just first ask what your company is doing in this space that's a bit unique right now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the compliment that we're one of Canada's many successful energy companies, but we're far less successful than we believe we deserve to. We started our company as a high-risk exploration company looking for giant gas fields. And unexpectedly, although, of course, it's like I say to my friends when I sink a 60-foot putt, they tell me I'm lucky. I say, well, I was aiming at it. So we were aiming at finding a giant field, but we did. It's the only giant shale field that one company found and also captured, and it's the Utica Shale in Quebec. And so it's a multi-billion-dollar, so 25 TCF of gas. It would be like Churchill Falls for 70 years. That's how big it is. And we've been stymied from developing it due to Quebec politics. It's been an effective ban for 13 years. I always thought the hard part was finding it. I've now realized producing it's even harder.
So we'll talk about those issues in a moment, but I mean, one of the recurring themes that comes up here is that the demand exists. The demand doesn't go away. All of the problems that are the barriers that are put up by the activists are trying to limit supply, but the demand is growing and certainly is maintaining. So when you're prevented from unlocking these resources, as you say, all it means is that some other supplier that is not as diligent at following these regulations and complying with the laws and the spirit of the law, they're the beneficiaries of it.
Yeah, that's certainly, I think, an important argument that we've made, just like when it's so true of our company and our discovery in Quebec. And this was a flummoxing thing to find, and I'm not sure people really realize it, but I've had people. I've had dinner with Stephen Guilbeault. I've had Patrick Bonin, the head of Greenpeace in Quebec, World Wildlife Fund, Suzuki. I've had them all tell me, as I said, that if we were to produce local gas, it would be a material reduction in Canadian emissions. And in the end, they said, we don't care, because we want Quebec to meet its targets. And your project is going to increase Quebec emissions, even as it reduces Canadian emissions. So this is something that I learned in 2011, 2012, years before the cancellation of Gateway. This is why we've been, I think, at the leading edge of these discussions, corporately and politically, is because because of realizing early that it's all about meeting targets and I guess to some extent virtue signaling rather than making a real difference. That argument for us in Quebec, if we produce local gas, like a really large reduction in Canadian emissions, it's true for the world too. If Canada produces more, the world emissions go down because we're more environmentally efficient.
You emphasized the word stated when you said the stated objectives. What did you mean by that?
Well, in part the stated objective is to reduce global emissions, and yet they're against projects that would do that. Because at the end of the day, they want to be able to say, I met a local target. And they don't, and seemingly don't, it's not a priority, or I don't want to say they don't care, but it doesn't seem to be a priority, but the globe's emissions would go down. If Canada would just produce more aluminum or more gas or more LNG, the global emissions would go down, even though Canada's might go up a bit. But is it a global problem? Are we supposed to be acting locally and thinking globally? But when I say stated, that's because I'm not so sure that they really want to think globally in their local assets.
The government has said that the just transition, they presented it basically as a fait accompli, as though they're already going to do this. It's just a matter of mitigating the harms and effects on, jobs to people that are currently working in this space. Have you seen anything from their proposals that have been put forward so far that suggests there will be a soft landing for the scores of Canadians that will be out of work if this dream comes to fruition?
Yeah, I just can't imagine. I'm chairman of a REIC services company, and we we're over in Papua New Guinea. I mean, we're giving amazing jobs to people. We literally take people out of grass huts in the jungle. I mean, it's hard to imagine. It's true. We're in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. We bring people out of the jungle. We teach them how to drive a truck, how to run a crane. Ultimately, over 15 years, we brought them up to the point where they're the driller, which is the word for the supervisor, the manager of the entire rig operation. These are $500 million operations, and we've got local indigenous Papua New Guinea people running these things. These are incredible jobs. I just can't even imagine telling those people in Papua New Guinea who've now got themselves out of grass hut in the jungle, or a Canadian here, go from your $150,000 to $250,000 job running a rig and go sweep snow off some mountains. It just doesn't make sense.
I mean, to talk about the Canadian context here for a moment, with Indigenous concerns, and that there are some legitimate Indigenous communities that have concerns about this, but I find oftentimes Indigenous issues are elevated by activists that would be opposed to the projects in general. And I think that's, I'd say, true of Quebec. You've done a lot to forge relationships with Indigenous communities that really want these projects, really want this development.
Yeah. In our corporate, I do this a lot in sort of advocacy and discussions around our industry and our country in general. But my company, one thing I'm proud of is that what we do at Questerre is fully aligned with that. I have an MOU with the Wollanek in Quebec. We have a cooperation agreement with the Ute tribe in Utah, where we've got working on an agreement here in Calgary for a new project. And of course the work that we've done in Papua New Guinea with Indigenous people, I think is world leading, right? So we have walked our talk on that, and I'm a real believer that we need to partner with our First Nations for so many reasons. One, practical, they're on the land. Two, just it's the right thing to do. It's wrong that we have poor people in Canada on reserve. We've done so little effective. We've done a lot to try to change it. We've done very little that's effective in changing it.
To go back to Questerre, knowing what you know now about the regulations and the hurdles and the bureaucracy and the barriers, would you have done it if you were to go back and had that chance to do it again?
Yeah. It's interesting. I was at a friend's cabin in Quebec at the lake, and I was explaining what we were doing with our gas field and so on and so forth. And he says, Michael, if you want to do something new in Quebec, you got to start when you're young. And I said to him, because it's going to take a long time. And I said, you don't understand. I did start when I was young. So when I go back, and it's been a fascinating experience. I mean, I say to people, if there hadn't been a moratorium in Quebec, I never would have learned French. But I now speak semi-fluent French. I would have never really learned about how Quebecers look at the history of Canada different than Alberta. I would have never really thought about that the Alberta view of Canada is just our view of Canada, because I realized Quebecers think completely differently. For them, the country started in 1608. For us, it started in 1886 with the railroad. For Ontario, it started with the 1840 rebellion. Yeah. And for others, it starts in 1867. What Canada is for people is when it starts for you, and it's a mosaic. People think differently. So none of these things. I wouldn't have started in political advocacy to try to promote Canada as a world leading source of environmentally friendly energy. All of these things came out of that. If I was going to do something different, I think the mistake if I was going to fix one mistake in Quebec, is when the environmental opposition started, I would have immediately said, okay, stop. Let's just put a hold on this. But it's hard when you're running a public company to go to your shareholders who are all excited about the fact that they're going to make all this money out of this massive discovery made, and then say, well, just wait. But it's been an example of the hurrier we went, the behinder we got. And it would have taken a lot of courage to tell our shareholders we're putting a hold. And I didn't have it at the time. And knowing what I know now, I would have had that courage and said, stop and don't press this forward with the population until they're ready.
And that's the tragedy of all of this. I mean, I know people may want to vilify, oil and gas CEOs, but a lot of these are not the giant corporate entities. These are businesses that are relatively small in some senses. And when you look at that, I mean, the number of companies that would not exist, the number of people that would not be employed, the number of people that could just pick up and say, I'm just going to focus on Utah. I'm just going to go to the United States. I'm not even going to worry about Canada because it's too much of a hassle. That's a real tragedy in what the government's doing here.
Well, what's Canada's strategic advantage? Well, this is what I feel passionate about from a national perspective. This was just my own company. Is that, we are a country with massive resources, very few people that need them to use them, and we have the shortest trade routes to Europe. Don't count Russia for some obvious reasons right now, and maybe let's just leave Norway out. They can't supply it itself for now. United States and Northern Asia. We're in the catbird seat. Canada should be talking now. It's time. People said the 20th century belonged to Canada. Well, it didn't really. It belonged to our senior partners, and we were the junior partner, punching above our weight in World War II, Korea, and peacekeeping, and now maybe on global environmental issues, but we're looking to try to be world leaders there too. But always as a junior partner. But where we're at right now, we could be the senior partner. The American, European, and Northern Asian communities, India, we have decent trade routes to India even. They need what we have. And if we were astute about our strategic advantages in the world, we would step up as the senior partner. If you don't treat us well, you won't get what you need, and we have what you need, and you should want it from us. We're responsible. What the speaker earlier just, you don't need to send the National Guard to Canada, right? So you can count on us to be reliable, but not only that, socially responsible. It's not just that you can count on us. Unlike Russia right now, you can't even count on them to deliver on contracts. So it's not just that you can count on us to deliver on a contract and keep our agreements. You can count on us that we use the profit of that not to fund terrorists. We use it to build hospitals, to build a better society, to build a culture that's aligned with your values. So why would you want to deal with anybody else? And why aren't we taking that and making Canada the senior respected partner in the world? Because everybody knows we need Canada.
As a clarion call to Canada and its leaders, people should listen to it. Michael Binnion, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.